I'm here with Matthew Torbitt, the only lefty allowed on this show station, a former Labour advisor, in a casual jumper. He had to go to the IMF for this. He's lost the suit. It's been spent. How are you, son?
Good. I thought it gave off very 1976 vibes and the bailout and whatever. That's what I thought. I thought you'd like that.
Corbyn's new party, Zara Sultana's not taken too well to this. Lots of suggestions. Left of Labour, the leftovers, the left behind party, Fruit and Nut. Jez Ballar is my absolute favourite.
Yes, I'm sure.
And she was offended by Sultana and the fruitcakes, but her name is Sultana. Corbyn's new party, what about Steptoe and Gone or the Rag and Bone Party, says Chris in Newby. That's a good one. Some of them I literally cannot possibly tell you what so many in there. Bubble and Squeak is my favourite so far. It's good we get make-up of the leftovers. To be fair to him, Jeremy Corbyn, a man who stood by his principles and got a bigger share of the vote than Keir Starmer. Let's talk about where this country is. I took on a caller earlier who said, mass deportations. I think there's a problem with the word mass. I agree wholeheartedly with what Nigel Farage intimated yesterday, but I also think it's important to point out that there are and have been thousands of people that have come to this country over the years and have enriched this country, embraced this country, employed people, done jobs, paid tax. I talk always about the man that picks me up, who came from Bangladesh 40 years ago. I talk about our Polish makeup artists who came here and built a business and do everything for those people. They are as appalled by people coming here illegally and taking advantage as you and I are. Nigel Farage yesterday, love him or loathe him, grabbed the political limelight, grabbed the baton, and has left the other two parties looking pretty neutered, hasn't he?
I think he can, because he hasn't got any responsibility at the moment. I used to think the same about the Greens on the sort of left of the Labour argument. They can promise the earth because they're not going to get in. Nigel obviously might do. That's not to say he won't. I think the thing that I find frustrating is I like to think people within the Labour government realise this is a hot-button issue and a serious one, and it's very important to people. But then I get messages from people within Labour circles saying, well, they were appalled by what Nigel had said and that blah, blah, blah. But also that, you know, I think we're doing all right on the immigration stuff. And I thought, are they high? Are they like, what? I said, by what metric? Because even as someone as liberal and as open as myself, you have to be a pragmatist. Since January of this year, we've had over 50,000 people come via small boat, right, which is an issue in itself in many ways. We hear yesterday that the government has 100 people that it is holding ready to deport back to France in weeks. Well, you're going to have 5 times that amount by the end of the week. So therefore, by what metric are we doing well on this stuff?
And how did these 100 suddenly arrive, and why have they been held, and why haven't they been deported before?
So this idea is part of the one in, one out.
You mean 17 in and one? Oh, 2,517 in and none out. This is what I mean. You were a political advisor, and I wanted to ask you this. What would enthuse me yesterday about Farage is this. It was proactive, not reactive. Everything about this government, almost everything about this opposition to me is reactive. Sure, he probably won't be able to do it all. Probably it'll cost more. Probably they'll find stuff. But there was a politician, male or female, not bothered about the political party, in my mind, reading the room, addressing what the British public want and going, I'm listening to you. I don't get that from our Prime Minister. I don't get that. What did you see what Badenoch said? I asked a KC in May to look into this. It's bloody September, woman. People want meat on the bone.
They do. However, in the rare occasion I actually find myself sticking up for Kemi Badenoch in that instance, it isn't that simple, as much as people would like it to be.
No, it's not. But I'm not a political advisor like you are. No, it's not simple. But surely the first rule is to turn the dial towards you so that people listen. They're not listening to Kemi Badenoch. They're not listening to Keir Starmer. They are listening to Farage. Nick Thomas Summons this morning said, you know, this is not a plan, this is disgraceful, this is just noise from a very small party that could fit in a taxi. I like Nick, but with respect, man, those 4 make more noise than anybody else, and they're getting the nation talking. I'm not sticking up for reform. There might be flaws in the system, but what I guess I'm saying is that you have to listen to what people want. You need to, I want to say PISS, I'm not going to. You have to stop taking the people for granted, I think, and assuming that we don't know what we're talking about and we're stupid.
You do, but I suppose in a way it's a question of what do you want from a politician? Do you want somebody
Honesty?
who is potentially... Yeah, no. Do you potentially want somebody that is offering simple answers to complicated questions, or somebody that's going to do the groundwork? I think part of the problem, whether it be immigration, the health service, our public services, all the mess that we've got, the economy, welfare ballooning, we're living in a climate where, one, people hate politicians, so straight away you're getting, you know, no credit whatsoever for anything. But also, we live in a climate of instant gratification, and I don't think people are prepared to wait. And my fear, even in opposition, and I would say this to MPs, even with all the goodwill in the world, even if we made all the right decisions, I think you will run out of time.
But I accept that. But one of my criticisms of Labour, a massive criticism actually, one that I won't back down on, is you talk about groundwork, and I'm sticking up for reform. I'm thinking here along the lines of Trump. I mean, I heard Zia Yusuf earlier say Nigel's first 100 days. What does that sound like, right? But here's the thing. Anybody knew you lot were getting in for 2 years.
I agree.
Anybody. You had Sue Gray, who had apparently been absolutely, you know, charged with you get it sorted. She went within 100 days. I don't believe that actually the groundwork, the planning and the foundations were in any way obvious from the Labour Party and have been in the last 12 months. I'm not saying that reform will have those now. Maybe they're going to build them, but I'm with you. And Kemi, yes, I know what you mean, but it's been a year. And Matt, in the end, people are going to go, well, just, you know, come on. And what has Nigel Farage done with his reform conference? It's a month before the other one, so he's going to steal a march again. It's proactive. Yeah,
well, there's different strategies with this. Nigel has done what he does, and he's gone out early.
Yeah.
Whether he'll have to row back certain bits will remain to be seen. I would not be too surprised to see a reshuffle the weekend of Reform's conference. Labour will do the tactic of trying to move anything they talk about off the news because ministers will get shuffled and potentially secretaries of state. I suppose Kemi has chosen a direction that I think is sensible, but Nigel's beat it to the punch, because what I think ultimately is she's asked the KC to look at the real legal framework of the complicated nature of coming out of the ECHR when it is absolutely embedded within the Good Friday Agreement, all this minutiae, so that she can go, I have the real plan of doing the hard work and what we'll have to do, and it might take a couple of years if we get back in. I think Nigel has been clever enough to go, she's going to announce at their conference. Their conference is last out of all the parties, therefore they'll have the last say almost before Parliament returns, and he's gone, I better beat her to it. So he's read that quite well. Again, it's whether the proof will be in the pudding potentially if he gets in. I see several issues, you know, Ascension Island, it's just not going to happen. The idea, the numbers, and I know it's boring to talk about numbers, but we have to be real about this stuff. If you're going to deport the type of numbers he wants to do 365 days a year, which is what Zia Yusuf said, that will be impossible because each person needs an escort, because ultimately these people may start kicking off and whatever else. You can't just put them on a plane and assume they'll behave themselves.
Con Air didn't work, did it?
Well, no. So I think the numbers are ambitious and therefore unrealistic. Now, if he wants to take it out...
But I go back to you. I get that. But the British people want to hear, I think, even if it's 100 or 1,000 or 200,000, that people are being moved. So you can say that number, which is what I meant. I mean, there will be situations, I'm sure, whereby it doesn't materialise, it doesn't happen. It's just he's talking about it. That's the difference.
I know, but I admire Nigel as a communicator.
I'm not sticking up for him.
No, but I could sit here and say I'll pay everyone £20 an hour and we won't raise taxes, and we can all say stuff, and admittedly it's stuff people want to hear. They want to hear action. And I just think this isn't even me sticking up for the government. I think they've looked totally impotent with all this stuff. Why? And I must say to you every week, the idea of offshore processing, and obviously Reform have been listening when I say we need to look at the 45 Convention, and Nigel goes, yeah, maybe we will just sort of scrap it and get on with it. It won't be easy, but you've got to look at solutions, and I agree with you. One of my biggest bugbears, even in opposition from the very off, during COVID and the rest of it, was this is totally reactive. There was no proactive thinking. And again, I go back to what lots of us know, really, is that there was a plan to win the election, there was no plan to govern.
But isn't that appalling?
Yes.
Did you know that at the time?
Yeah, but why do you think I left? I'd half a hope of going helping the homelessness minister, who didn't get the brief anyway, and he was going to try and argue for me to come through the back door because ministers don't tend to get spads, and we had a close relationship. That didn't materialise. That's the only thing, because I thought I can keep busy with that, regardless of the noise. But you have to remember, these are a group of people that, you know, the chief of staff worked in local government for 20 years. He's not like a big brain box that knows what he's doing. These people were tasked with factional warfare and killing the left of the Labour Party. Winning an election wasn't really... We didn't expect to do it in 5 years. This wasn't a master plan. Liz Truss handed it us. That's what happened. Partygate, Rishi running out of time. I would say I felt a little bit sorry for him, and then mucking up in the election, not going to the remembrance celebrations and whatever. So this was never really the plan. I think really the plan, as we always heard, is there was a shadow leadership operation for the shadow health secretary at the time. The idea was Keir might stop the bleeding and we'd have to have another go, and it's landed too early. There was no forward planning. And what Dominic Cummings would say is the perfect example is the winter fuel. If you do not go into government with political priorities, the civil service will impose their political priorities on you. Well, for the last however many chancellors, they've gone, do winter fuel, do winter fuel. And most people have had the foresight to go, yeah, right, that's going to kill us politically. We've grasped at it and gone, oh, fine, yeah, we'll do that. Look at it, mess.
Really interesting. Love having you on, even in a jumper. But they are mess. Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor. Respect to your dad. Thank you.